What's up, guys? Coming to you on a Thursday, just about an hour and a half before Thursday night football kickoff. So I hope to get you a little primer for the weekend here before our football weekend. Just a reminder, we do have a free Discord if you want to come chat with us. Just DM any of us in the on Twitter, and we'll get you a link. We do have a Patreon as well if you want access to our exclusive tiers, and we have a cool dynasty tool as well that kind of tracks some of your rostership and some other fun stuff that's tailored to each league. But you're here for a show, so let's give you one here. We had a bunch of stuff going on this weekend. First of all, Holler, I didn't introduce you, but what's up, man? Say hello to the people.
What's up? This is awesome. Right before the game, I was like before putting my notes in, doing some of my rosters. I have a good start of the week for everybody today. So once we get there, make sure you get them in your lineup. But
Yeah.
yeah, so many injuries. It's crazy. I was looking at some of my teams. Like, do I want to move some guys? Do I think my
Oh,
my teams are, you know, moving the room for like playoffs or what? And just looking injury is just like I can't even make a decision yet.
it's
I think week 3 is kind of the cutoff, right? If like look at how many points you're scoring, look at how many points against, right? I use those numbers quite a bit to kind of determine like, am I playing against kind of weaker teams? Am I just getting lucky? So like some of my teams that might be like 2-0, I'm like, okay, is this actually a good team or what? So really take a look at those points. Like that's one place I look, and I kind of see like where's my team trending. Like if I'm not putting a lot of points up, I'm just lucky. I got lucky 2-0, which doesn't really mean much in my opinion.
for sure. I love that. That's a great point about looking at your points scored and kind of your max points as well, because it kind of gives
Yeah,
you an idea of your roster. I was DMing you and Ron, but I have a team that is 2-0 right now,
yeah,
and it is 11th in points for, and I think 10th in max points for, but it somehow is 2-0. So got to
yeah,
figure it was actually like an orphan I took over earlier this year, and I was looking at it and I was like, wait, is this a good team? And I started setting my lineup. I was like, oh no, it's trash. I just got really lucky. So record
yep,
doesn't mean much. So you need the
yep,
points context there.
yeah. For example, one team that I thought was good, I got injuries to CMC, AJ Brown, Debo, and others, and I'm starting Darius Slayton, Greg Dortch, and Adam Thielen. So, and that's a 2-0 team. So there you go. I don't think that
Scary
team is
place to
really,
be.
yeah. Don't. But hey, we're all in this spot right now with going through these news real quick. We'll see. Like, it's rough right now.
Chances are, if you had a bad team, you might actually be in better shape because it seems like all the good players are getting injured, not the depth pieces. So let's
Yeah,
dive into some of these
unfortunately.
injuries real quick. I'm just gonna kind of rattle off some of these injuries, and then we can go back and talk about them. So one, Christian McCaffrey, that's the big one. Went to IR with Achilles tendonitis. Sounds like he might miss more than 4 games. Cooper Cup, he's got an ankle sprain injury going on. It sounds like he's not going to go on IR, but he is going to miss some time. Debo Samuel and AJ Brown are both going to miss a couple weeks. They're banged up. I know AJ Brown's got the hamstring. Tua, this is probably one of the bigger ones in the quarterbacks. He went to IR with his concussion he got. This is he's got a huge history of concussions. He's going to go seek a independent neurologist. It looks like he doesn't have any plans on retiring, but it's a fluid situation. Isaiah Pacheco also went to IR with a fractured fibula. It sounds like he might be trending towards done for the season, which is disappointing. And then Jordan Love, a little bit of positive news. He's been practicing back-to-back days yesterday and today. Of those guys, Holler, what stands out to you?
So for first off, Tua, I think it's really good that he's going to IR. There's life outside of football. He's got
Hmm.
kids. He's a dad. So for me, I think it's super important. I mean, I think he should really look at it, to like I don't think he should retire, but I think depending on what doctors say, I think he should think about it. But when you're a football player and you love playing football, it's really hard to hang it up, especially in those terms.
Yeah.
So for me, I think Miami did him right by putting him on IR, not rushing him back. So for me, that was really good news. And then just like I think CMC is probably the biggest one because most people
Yeah.
put him or like redrafted him in the first round easily. You think you have CMC, and you're like, okay, if I have some other pieces as well, I'm probably going to play in making the playoffs, and that's unfortunate. And I think with the like Achilles tendonitis for me, that's like probably going to be lingering. You're never going to know.
Hmm.
I was an athlete, and tendonitis was never a good thing to hear, and no matter where it is, especially in the Achilles. So that one's the biggest. And then Cooper Cup, I think he probably would have gone on IR, but with how many injuries the Rams have, I think they have a certain amount of numbers you can only put on IR. So he'll probably be out in the same amount of time if he was going to be on IR. And then Debo and AJ Brown, those are both kind of up in the air. We heard on Monday Night Football that AJ Brown could miss up to a couple weeks, and then on Debo's podcast, he said that he would be out for a couple weeks as well. So you never know; they could just pop back up, and like Jordan Love, you're like, okay, I think he's going to be out for a couple weeks, and then the second week he's back practicing. So it just kind of depends. I think with all of these injuries, it's just these are all big names, right? And so this is really really tough. So this is why you make you make moves to have depth, right? It's never like bad to have too many good players on your team. So it's like I said earlier, it's not fun to be starting the Greg Dortches, the even Adam Thielen was good last year, but it's not fun starting Adam Thielen. So it's just tough with all these injuries. But it was nice to see Jordan Love back. I think he might play this week. I don't think he got injured as bad as like they first thought. So it's good to
Right.
see. I think that whole offense will be running a lot better. They barely threw the ball with Malik Willis, which we understand why. But it will be a much better offense, especially for all those players. So
Ah, sorry, I was just reading in the chat.
yeah,
Wes is just roasting holler here. Um, The other one I don't think we touched on too much was Pacheco. Is there any concern with you? So he was what, a seventh round pick? I think he was like almost one of the last picks in his draft class. Now he's going to miss a bunch of time this year. Is there any concern that you have of him being potentially replaced by the Chiefs in the next offseason, whether it's through free agency, whether it's through the draft? Because I think there was rumblings that they wanted to get Josh Jacobs this last offseason. Sounds like they weren't necessarily sold on him being just by himself. So are you worried about Pacheco at all?
yep. I don't like have too many shares. So, but overall, yeah. When a player that's not like I don't want to say he's not super good, but he's a solid player, right? But we already heard that they were maybe going to bring in Josh Jacobs. So they're always looking for. It sounds like they're always looking to replace him already, right? And so now he's going to go on IR for quite a while. He's going to miss at least up to 6 weeks. I heard, and maybe even more.
Hmm.
So I think they're going to be able to see, if Carson Steele is good enough. If I think it's going to be a running back by committee, but I think they're going to go out next year. There's some really good running backs coming with the draft next year. So I think with how good the Chiefs are, like really, if they can get a better running back, I think they will. And unfortunately, I think Pacheco is going to kind of be the odd man out. When and injuries don't stop teams from moving on from players, unfortunately, especially
Right.
good teams. So I think it's a possibility that this could be almost I want to say the end, but kind of the end of Pacheco. Unfortunately, I know he was kind of on the fringe. Some people didn't really want to roster him. I think we've always been a little bit worried about this. So I think now we're going to see it if the Chiefs can definitely stay afloat be a positive. Maybe they go in the next. Maybe he gets eight. He's out for 8 weeks, right? And they go like 6-2, and they can put up around 80 yards rushing per game. I think obviously they'll bring him back for the year, but I think they're going to look elsewhere for next year.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think his one saving grace is he's still under contract. He's on that rookie contract where they basically are paying him almost nothing
Yeah,
next year. So next year will be his last year under contract. I think I would be shocked with all their contracts and the team, some of the guys they have paid and are going to have to pay if he comes back after
yeah. So
2025, right? So
I I think it's possible. Like it's probably more probable than anything that he's there next year. But I say they get another running back. You know, the landscape of the NFL, there's always two running backs, and they don't really have anybody outside of him that is that good, right? Carson Steele's there. We don't know how good he is. Um,
right.
you know, there's others, but I just yeah, there's a Perrine, which I mean, he's only going to be there for a year, right? So I think they draft somebody, and maybe he's their secondary running back there next year, and then once they don't pick up his second contract, and then I think that might be the end of Pacheco, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think so too. Which is it's too bad because I feel like he's a fun guy to watch. Right, he runs
Yeah.
angry. He's an
Yep.
angry candidate here.
Yeah.
And I think we might have buried the lead a little bit, but Bryce Young got
Yeah.
benched after week 2. So he was the number 1 overall pick back in what 2023, right? And so he played last year. He gets 2 games this year, and then they put him on the shelf and enter the Red Rifle for the Red Rifle resurgence. Um, I had an Andy Dalton stack because I was kind of curious. I vaguely remember him playing well. He started 1 game last year and he threw for 361 yards and 2 touchdowns. So are you firing up the Red Rifle anywhere?
So there's spots where I didn't have a running back, or excuse me, I didn't have a quarterback too, and I threw almost all my fab at him in a couple of spots, and it was nice to
Okay.
see though that like other people put a lot of fab out for him as well because I think he's got the weapons that he will be, you know, okay, an okay quarterback too. And so yes, I will be firing him up. There's some spots that I'm thinking about maybe putting him over Matthew Stafford with how bad and how banged up the Rams are, especially because they're playing the 49ers this week. So those are spots I'm thinking about maybe putting him in there. But yeah, I think this is a boost for definitely Deontay Johnson.
Yeah.
Definitely, I think some people were already writing off Jonathan Brooks, and I think overall we haven't seen the Red Rifle in a while, but I think he's going to be better than Bryce Young. Unfortunately, watching Bryce Young, it was brutal. It was just kind of sad to be honest, like how bad. I think there's some things going on in his head that it's just not right. I think he needs some some help, right? And I've seen some just rumors of like trades and things like that. And I think a new scenery with a good coach, I think would really help Bryce Young. But I doubt they move him because they're going to get pennies on the dollar, right? But overall for this Panthers offense, I think the Red Rifle is going to be better, and you're going to feel more confident starting Deontay Johnson, mainly the only one there, I think, in my opinion.
I think it's great news for Deontay Johnson. I was
Yeah,
obviously I'm a Raiders fan, right? And I saw the benching news happen, and I was like, I feel a lot less confident about this game with Andy Dalton playing. They play at
yeah,
Las Vegas this weekend, um, but yeah, man, Andy Dalton. I had to make a gross trade today, and we can talk about it. It's a
yep,
16 it's a 16 teamer. My only quarterback I had was Jordan Love. I kind of went the route of fading quarterback in order to build up running back and wide receiver. Last week I ended up actually winning that week without any points for my quarterback position, and I reached out to the guy who has Andy Dalton, and I had to send an early 25 second. It's probably like the 204, I would say, if I had to guess. About 27% of my fab, and oh shoot, what's his name? The
it's
smudging
easy
P
to
Ryan
know.
for Andy Dalton. Um, and it's like, dude, I felt so gross, but I was like, I need a quarterback. Like a 16 team where everyone was hoarding the quarterbacks, and I was like, you got to overpay, and it's like, well, I'm hope I hope this is worth
Yep.
it, but
So two things there: a 16 teamer and a starting quarterback. It's you're gonna have to pay, right? And for me, it's I think the biggest piece, obviously, there is that second. With
yeah,
how deep I know 2025, I feel like already is going to be a lot of running
yeah,
backs, some solid wide receivers, and I think some of those quarterbacks are going to be kind of fall down a little bit because none of them are that good.
yeah.
Some are rounding out and they're starting to be a lot better than we thought in the beginning. But I do think we say it every year, but I do think the drafts will be pretty deep next year. So
Hmm.
that's the only thing. But in a 16 team, you got to pay up for those quarterbacks. There's only 32. So
Right.
that to me, you got to pay for a starting quarterback.
Yeah, I kind of got put in a crappy position there, and so maybe fading quarterback kind of came back to bite me.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
all right. So that was a bunch of the injury roundup there and some of the news. let's jump into some of our dynasty movers here. We have a trio of young wide receivers that we want to talk about here. First and foremost, Marvin Harrison Jr. Maybe he's not washed after one game after all. I know everyone was talking about how slow he was and how he was bad, and he comes out and just bang on, 4 receptions, 130 yards, and 2 touchdowns.
Yep.
Like I think all in the first quarter, and then
Whew.
that was just an absolute beatdown of the Rams. Which I'm sure you were thrilled to watch. But
You know,
um, maybe he's not dead
that was
after
rough.
all.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't think he's dead at all. I think it was kind of a coming out party for him. In week one, they played the Bills, right? We have to remember that
Hmm.
the Bills are a good team. They don't really have wide receivers, but overall, the Bills in general are a very good team. They've made the playoffs the last couple of years. To me,
Hmm.
that's a solid team. It's really hard for a rookie to come out and have a great game against a playoff caliber team, right? And so for me, it was really, really good to see him kind of beat up on a bad team, right? That's what we want our top wide receivers or top fantasy players doing. It would have been nice to not have those. I wouldn't call them drops, but those other 2 or 3
Hmm.
passes that went his way and he didn't catch them. He might have been upwards of almost close to 200 yards if he would have caught those. But yeah, he got his touchdowns. I think the biggest, like, to me, the coolest thing was how he stretched out for that second touchdown.
Hmm.
He's just to me, he's just a freak of nature. I have him firmly in my top 5 wide receivers in Dynasty right now. I wouldn't want to go out and try to buy him. He's going to be extremely extremely pricey. So I think this is more of what we're going to see. Maybe not 130 yards every week, but I think we're going to see more of anywhere from 4 to 6 catches each week. 80 yards is probably something we'll see, and I think that's what we want to see from him, right? There's
Absolutely.
the only other player in like pass catcher in Arizona is McBride. He had a solid game as well, so I think we'll see the same coming up this week with both McBride and Marvin Harrison.
Yeah, their next 2 games, so they play Detroit, which doesn't necessarily have Ron, I hope you're not listening. Doesn't exactly have a scary secondary that scares anyone
Yeah,
away. And then they play the Commanders in week 4, which is just licking your chops. That's going to be a huge game. So
yep,
Marvin Harrison Jr. is doing awesome. The next guy who was drafted, just after Malik Neighbors, or sorry, just after Marvin Harrison Jr. was Malik Neighbors. I mean, he went nuclear this last week. He had 10 catches,
yep.
127 yards, and a tutty against the Commanders. Malik Neighbors, just a couple of stats here. It's crazy. He's no one's really being used like he is. 53% of the team's total yards, 50% first read rate. So basically every other play they go to him. 36% target share,
Crazy,
56% of the team's total air yards. And that first read rate, like just to put into context, like the next closest guy to him is at 38%, which interestingly enough is Quentin Johnson, which we could probably get into a different time. But Malik Neighbors, dude, he is that offense. He is fantastic. I moved him all the way up to wide receiver 5 in my tiers. I actually have him buddied up right next to Amon St. Brown, which felt a little weird at the time, but it's like Malik Neighbors, he might be the next new thing, and I think he's real good, and they have no one
yep.
else there, so he's just going to keep getting peppered with volumes.
So yeah, I mean, it sounds weird to have him this high after 2 games, but to me, I think we talked about it a couple of weeks ago that we maybe thought he could be QB proof, but I think he is QB proof, right? If you're doing this with Daniel Jones, you're a very very good wide receiver. I have him in the same spot as you. Actually, I have him at QB 6. So my little in the beginning of our show, my little note was that I think at the end of the season he's going to be wide receiver 6. I think I need to change that because I think he's firmly
Done.
going to be wide
Nailed it.
receiver 5 or 6, right? Any day of the week we could flip flop him with Marvin Harrison. I think on Keep Trade Cut, which is not the greatest site to use, but I think Marvin Harrison is all the way up to 3, and I think Neighbors is at 6. So I've already hit that. Unfortunately, it wasn't really too much of a stretch for me, but yeah, Neighbors is so good. I just think that if you know if they were to get, I think there could be a little bit of regression because teams are going to know, hey, Neighbors is getting this many looks. We got to
Yeah.
stop him, and we'll be good. So I think there could be a little bit, but Wandell is there, and I think he's a solid player, not great, but I think he's a solid player, right? So I think if
Hmm.
Daniel Jones could look his way a little bit more, maybe Theo Johnson starts to get in the mix a little bit. They spread the ball a little bit more, and then Neighbors maybe gets not as many looks, or like not as many looks his way, but then the defense may push back a little bit, right? And so 17 targets, that's up there with uh, Cooper Cup on week one where he had 21
Hmm.
targets, right? So that's crazy, right? So if we can get anywhere from 10 to 14 per week, he should be getting anywhere from 80 to 100 yards per week, and easily that's wide receiver, you know, 4 through 6 in my opinion. So
Oh yeah.
if he's on any, him and Marvin Harrison Jr., I know they're going to be expensive, but if they are on teams that the team is bad, and you have maybe a younger player and a first, and maybe a second, I would explore getting these guys, because these are the type of guys that are going to put you over the top. You already have like a really good wide receiver core. You just add him in, boom, your team is definitely going to make the playoffs, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the things I put down, I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on were, if you have like a Justin Jefferson, a Jamar Chase, CD Lamb, would you explore moving down, kind of tearing down to Malik Neighbors? Because I feel like there's still a gap there, and I don't know for how long that's gonna be the case, but I think you could
Yeah,
get a decent plus. So it looks like Malik Neighbors he's like wide receiver 10 on Dynasty Daddy right now, which if people are
yeah.
going off of that, I don't know if you're really going to get wide receiver 10 prices, but I still think there you could get a plus moving from Jefferson or one of those guys down to Neighbors. And uh, what kind of a plus do you think you could get, and would you do it?
So so the one guy I think I would move, and feel fine with it is Jamar Chase, right?
Sure.
He's unhappy. He's like, unfortunately, he's a hothead. I think he just had a bad week, so
Mm,
I would definitely move Jamar Chase for them. I don't know if I would move CD or Justin Jefferson, right? Just depends on what I would get, right? If it's just hard, like flipping a top player for another guy. Maybe you get Malik Neighbors and then a running back, right? Depending on who that running
mhm.
back is, then I think I could do that as well. I could maybe move my CD Lamb or Justin Jefferson, but those two guys I would feel a little harder to move. With everything we know, Jamar Chase, I feel good about moving him for those guys. So funny that we bring up something like CD Lamb. I just pulled up trades in from Dynasty Daddy 3 days ago. Malik Neighbors and Nico Collins for CD Lamb. I would do that.
Oh, I want the Neighbors in this. That's more for
Yes.
Nico for me.
Yep.
That's awesome. That's a
Yeah.
huge
I
return. I saw one too. I was curious. So this is going the other way, but if you have Tank Dell and a 25 first, let's call it like mid, with going up to get Malik Neighbors, how do you feel about that one? 'Cause for
I
me,
would do it.
I'd do that in a heartbeat.
Yep, I would do it. I kind of goes against what I said a little bit ago, or in a little bit that we'll talk about with Tank Dell. But yeah, I would do that, right?
Yeah,
I would assume it's hard to tell, but I would hope my team is solid enough that that would be a late first. But even if that's a mid first, right?
yeah,
I think Neighbors is better than anybody coming out next year.
I think so
I would
too.
have him, you know, number one or two, depending on what you do with Marvin Harrison. I would have him 1 and 2, and I think he's better than anybody coming out next year. So even if that does move down to like a 104, 105, even 103, I'd be good with that.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's hit on our next guy here. Jackson Smith and Jigba. He finally is risen from the ashes. 12 receptions, 117 yards throughout the season. He's averaging a 2.27 yards per route run. I know there was a lot of jokes about how he was bad last year. I feel like he's finally being used appropriately in
Yep.
this new offense, right? And now you're kind of seeing what he can do. He's wide receiver 24, so if math checks out. 12 teams, 24. He's a wide receiver two, albeit just barely, but still 34% of the team's air yards. So they're actually using him past the line of scrimmage. And no, last year he basically got used in that, basically that screen game, and that was about it. surprise, surprise, he's actually faster than we thought, and he can run routes. So JSN baby, would you buy him for a late first, or are you still not? Do you need to see more before you fully buy in?
So I would buy him for a late first. I think, like I talked about a little bit earlier, you can never have too many good guys on your team. If you have three stacked wide receivers, maybe you have just a few injuries, right? Maybe you have an AJ Brown on the shelf,
Mm,
and you feel like your team is set. Definitely, I would throw him in there and get yourself, like, because I bought George Pickens, which I believe is a bit higher than JSN, but I bought George Pickens for a
mhm,
first and QJ. And I would do the same, right, for JSN. I talked about it over the summer, but I really really like Brian Grubb. I think he's a very very good offensive
yeah,
coordinator. They used multiple wide receivers in Washington last year, and multiple wide receivers were solid. And so I think I know we were a little bit worried the first week. That pass offense didn't really look very good in Seattle, but now Kenneth Walker, he could be out a couple weeks. So I do think DK and JSN are really going to eat the next couple weeks until
mhm,
Kenneth Walker comes back. Sharps is not the greatest, runner per se. I think he does a good job pass catching, but to me, he's not the. He's nowhere near the same running back as Kenneth Walker, right? So they're going to need to pass the ball a bit more. Yes, they were playing the Patriots, and their secondary isn't the greatest. They have Christian Gonzalez, who's really really good. So it was good to see JSN and DK having a really good week. But I think this is what's going to come with JSN the rest of the year. Ryan Grubb is going to use him in the way he should be used. Maybe he's not going to get 16 targets per weekend, but we don't need that, right? If we need him to be a wide receiver too, he needs anywhere from 8 to 12 targets, and he can get 60 to 80 yards. In some weeks, you get a touchdown. That's what we're going to like that. Anybody's going to like that. So I would definitely buy for a late first. Let's look at your team. Like I said earlier, look at those points for and points against. Especially if
mhm.
if you could beef up that those flex spots with the JSN, that would be awesome. Obviously, this was with Ron, and he loves his Detroit Lions, but I moved Jameson Williams for JSN straight up, and I'm loving that now. A
Yeah,
couple weeks ago, I think it was maybe even last week on the pod, we talked about Isaiah Likely. I was looking at Dynasty Daddy. It was Isaiah Likely. There was one Isaiah Likely for JSN, and I think you and Ron both said you would take Likely, and I said I would take JSN. And so I think,
yeah.
unfortunately, what we saw last weekend, I think everyone would now flip and say they would want JSN. But hey, this is a fluid game. Things change every week.
Fell victim to that week one hype, man. The
Um,
Isaiah Likely.
yeah, but so speaking of, like a first round pick, I don't really love any of these on here that I want to talk about, but um, like it's looking like he's moving around for a first. There's just a bunch of like
Jason.
wish
Okay.
wash here. Yeah, so I would definitely move him for a first, especially if you feel confident your team is going to be in the playoff hunt.
Yeah, I have him tiered right now. Actually, just after a late first, but I think if you're gonna realistically buy him, you're gonna have to send that late first, right? And so, um, maybe if he does it for another week, but then your buy window might, as the price of the bricks moving up, as they say. So,
Yep.
the time to strike might be now. Let's
Yeah.
switch gears and talk a little tight end here. Sam Laporta is now 2 weeks into the season. Some of the numbers and the usage is getting a little concerning with him. So I'll just kind of compare 2023 to 2024, right? His target share was at just under 20% last year. It's down to 8.3% this year. His first read rate was at 20% last year. Now it's down to 8.6. Air yards was 21.6 last year. It's at 8% this year. His route participation and passing snaps percentage are about the same, but he's not getting kind of the same love. Did he have to kind of die for Jameson Williams to live? And what are your thoughts? Are you concerned a little bit? Do you think it's just a couple of the game plans that for the first 2 weeks, or
Yeah.
expect to bounce back, or is this kind of
So
more what to expect?
I, I think that he'll bounce back, right? I think everybody was worried about Sun God after week one.
Mhm.
We thought, oh, great, it's the Jameson Williams show. And then again, Jameson Williams had a great game in the second game as well. But to me, Jameson Williams is going to be more of a boomer bust guy, right? If he doesn't catch some of those long passes, then I don't really think I think he's going to kind of not really show up, right? I think
Sure.
Laporta is going to get put in this week. I think he's going to um, be good for like top three the whole season, right? The whole tight end landscape is pretty murky right now. There's a lot of injuries.
Mhm.
A lot of good guys are not really showing up. So I personally feel like there's not very many tight ends that are going to be better than Sam Laporta. I think that offense will get going more. I feel like the Rams had their best, going to probably had the best game of the season, week one, right? And so I think they did a good job of taking Laporta away. And then it was a little scary to not see Laporta have a good game week two. But I just think the Lions overall just didn't have a good game against Tampa Bay. I
Goff
think
played
that
terribly.
yeah, I was gonna say I just don't think I think the Bucks are a solid team. So I think they ran into a
Mhm.
solid team and Goff had a bad game. They get the Cardinals this week. So I feel Sam Laporta will be back this week. Maybe not back to where we would like him to be, but I do think they're going to get him involved. Right? They can't really have him not involved 2 weeks in a row. Make it 3 weeks in a row. I don't think that's going to happen. I even think the um, offensive coordinator came out and said that this week's going to be a Sam Laporta week. So unfortunately, I feel like with how good that offense is, with so many good players, that some guys are going to be left out some weeks, right? And that's going
Yeah.
to be tough. I think they're going to feed the ball to Sun God because I think that's what really makes their offense go. And I think they wanted to kind of showcase Jameson Williams in week one and Sunday Night Football. And so I think for me, Jameson Williams is going to be more of a boomer bust guy. And I think they're going to get Sun God and Laporta back in the game, and I think those are going to be the two big guys moving forward.
I agree. I just was looking a little concerning was Jameer Gibbs is actually out targeting Sam Laporta almost 2 to 1. It's 13 to 7 right now in terms of targets.
Yeah. I like I said, I think they unfortunately or fortunately they have a lot of good players on their team. Right. And
Yeah,
so I don't think Jared Goff is a good enough quarterback to support all those guys. I think that's in my opinion, I think that's the biggest issue. And overall
sure.
he's not playing well. Like when he's playing well, then those guys are all getting what they need and it's nice to have all those guys playing well. But for me, for right now, what I've seen like even week one, he didn't play that well. And so far he's not playing very well. And so it's hard to support all these top end guys when your quarterback's not playing really well. So I think overall, they didn't play in the preseason. So I think it's going to take a couple weeks. And I think this is a get right week for them because the Cardinals have a good
Mhm.
offense. So they're going to have to put up numbers. And I think they will.
I think so too. And the Cardinals have a really bad secondary, so if they're
Oh,
matched
yeah.
up with Sam Laporta, it's just time to feast. Um,
Yep.
let's hit up another tight end here, one that's near and dear to my heart. Brock Bowers. This last game, 9 targets, 9 receptions, 98 yards against Baltimore. On the season, he's got 16 targets for 15 catches, 156 yards, which leads the NFL in tight ends for receiving yards. How high do we move Brock Bowers, man? I have him all the way up to tight end 3 now. I actually have
Yep.
him tiered with Laporta. Um,
Yep.
it feels like the sky's the limit, and like, is he going to be the tight end 1 before the end of the year? Like, if he keeps this up, he's
If he keeps it up, yeah. I mean, I think kind of in the spot he's at with the Raiders, outside of Devonta Adams, they have really nobody.
Mhm.
And so I think him and Devonta Adams are going to get peppered with targets. And I think Devonta Adams is more of a guy that they kind of want to stretch the field. Yes, he gets some of those short outs and things like that. But to me, um, it looks like Minshew's first read is Brock Bowers, right? And that's the guy he goes to when they need
Mhm.
anywhere from 5 to 8 yards. And I think he's going to continue to get that. And so I think easily he could be moving up all the way to tight end one. With like how bad the tight ends overall, like to me, he's firmly in that top three range. If
Yeah.
Laporta continues to have a rough year, and then I think it might be hard for him to move above Trey McBride, because we saw what Trey
Sure.
McBride could do last year, and he's again starting to have another good year. And I think people are going to have to um, like defenses are going to have to really focus more on Marvin Harrison Jr. And I think Trey McBride might get opened up a little bit more, right? So I think there might be a little bit there, but he's firmly above Dalton Kincaid. I think there's a big gap between those three tight ends and then everybody else, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was just like, I saw some crazy Brock Bowers trades, man. I think it might be almost impossible to acquire him at this point. Just from today, Bowers got moved straight up for Anthony Richardson, and he also
Yep,
got moved for Trey McBride. And then to get this, the McBride side had to add a 2026 second, which feels nuts, dude.
that's
But like,
crazy.
the Brock Bowers hype is out of control. I love it, man. I'm here for it. Minshew seems to love him, and you touched on it. It's that offense is essentially it's the ball is going to Devontae Adams or Brock Bowers, or it's probably going to be an incomplete pass.
Yep,
And it's just which is probably not great for real life, but for fantasy purposes, fantastic, right? Like we know
yep.
exactly where the ball's going, and it's getting hyper tunneled to where two of the best players in the field.
And I think it was maybe today or yesterday, Antonio Pierce came out and just said from day one he's been a blue chip guy. So I just think he's a
Love it.
really, really good football player, right? And
Yeah,
so they're going to get the ball to him. I don't think that's going to change. If you have him, don't move him unless you get McBride in
Trey
a second.
McBride in it too. Yeah.
Maybe move him for that. But you know, and conversely, I think there might be a little bit of a probably not like cheap, but I think there's a spot that maybe you can go out and get yourself Sam Laporta, for a little bit of a discount. So some people might be worried um, that Sam Laporta, like that he's not going to get it done. But maybe if you can add a little bit to Kyle Pitts and get yourself Sam Laporta, maybe this week's Kyle Pitts has a good game, and then Sam Laporta has another stinky game, then maybe that would be a time that okay, let's move Kyle Pitts and a plus for
Yeah.
Sam Laporta, which I would do. I don't think that's going to happen, but I'm just saying, it's a possibility. Like there might be room for maybe to acquire Sam Laporta on a little bit of a discount. Probably not too much, but I think it's possible.
If anything, even if you're not getting a discount, it's one of those things where it's like you're sometimes the tight end two or tight end one, whatever. Those guys, those are the prices for them, but it's like they're not willing to sell. Sometimes when they start having a bad game, it's like it opens the window for you to buy them,
Exactly.
whether you're getting a
Cap-
discount or not.
Captain Joe King. I like this a lot. You
Okay.
traded Worthy and Flowers for Bowers.
Ooh,
If there's any tight end premium there, I love it even more.
yeah.
I think it's a lot with Worthy and Flowers, but for me, I was just looking at I have a good amount of Xavier Worthy, and we saw it last week. He's going to be a boomer bust guy. Some weeks he's going to have 2 touchdowns. Most weeks he's going to have none. So I think it just depends on who they're playing. I think maybe they might get him more involved with Pacheco on the shelf. They might get him more involved in some end arounds and things like that. So I think I think this is a really good trade, and I think it's a very good possibility that Bowers finishes as the tight end one this year.
Yeah, I agree. If there's a tight end premium there, love it. Having to ship off two good wide receivers is always tough. But the good news is, there's always good wide receivers that come into the league every year.
Yeah,
We see it year after year, especially like the last few classes. So they're more easily replaced. Tight ends, there's not always a good tight end that's come in. I know we've gotten a couple good ones with Bowers and Laporta and McBride, but usually there's like one guy, right? It's not like a
yeah,
whole host of them. So just from the position scarcity point of view, like I fully support that, and I love me some Brock
exactly.
Bowers.
Yeah, and so like I like Xavier Worthy. I like Flowers. Like they're both solid wide receiver 2, 3 guys. But if you can get yourself a tight end one, like the tight end one, and you're really not sending off like too good of assets, yeah, it's a smash in my opinion. Yeah, Flowers had a good game last week. He had a touchdown, but same thing with Worthy. I think Flowers is more of. I've talked about it a couple weeks ago. I said he's a gadget guy, but he's a very good gadget guy. But that's how they use him in Baltimore. Like I think they're going to run the ball a ton. So I think that's just how it's going to be. And I think if you can get yourself that the tight end one overall, do it every time.
Yeah, for sure. I was just trying to pull up his A dot. Yeah, Zay Flowers A dot's at 8.4. So like they use him really exclusively in like the screen game and some like quick slants. He's not ever going to be a deep threat. And I think we talked about this too. It's like he's kind of at his ceiling, right? He's never going to
Yeah.
be like a wide receiver one. Like he's going to be a very good low end wide receiver two for you, but it's never going to be like a I don't know. Like I feel like he's a guy you can feel good about putting in your lineup, but you're never like, oh, he's gonna smash this week for me.
Yep.
So,
I feel
uh,
good if he's more of a like a depth piece, right? And so
yeah,
if
mhm.
I'm moving depth pieces for uh, the possibility of the tight end one overall, like again, smash, smash, smash.
Yep.
So that's another thing right there. Is like if you can move something like that, Worthy and Flowers for Sam Laporta. Yeah, Sam Laporta's not doing great, but that's another thing right there. Boom, like get yourself a guy that is going to be a cornerstone piece of your team.
All right, let's hit on two wide receivers that have kind of disappointed a little bit to start the season. Michael Pittman and Tank Dell. What are you thinking here? I know Pittman and Tank Dell both did really good last year, and they both really started off slow. Are you worried about either of these guys? Are you hitting the pack button, moving down your rankings, or are you just kind of holding out, hoping that they turn it around here?
Yeah, so I moved both guys down. They both got they. I think Pittman I had up at in my tier 9. He was in like the 15, 16 range, and I moved Pittman down to my wide receiver 22 range, and tanked all the way down to 26. Unfortunately for Michael Pittman, um, you know, we've heard many times before, and now we're seeing it each week. Is Anthony Richardson is not very accurate, right? He's 50% completion rate right now, and for me, Pittman is the type of guy that needs. We saw it with Gardner Minshew, right? He was good with Gardner Minshew because Gardner Minshew can throw the ball well. He's not a great quarterback, but he can throw the ball well and get
Yeah.
the ball to his quarterbacks, or excuse me, his wide receivers. Um, Anthony Richardson is more of a guy that's a flashy guy that's going to throw the deep ball and hopefully gets it to the guy. And maybe sometimes he's going to throw a good ball, and the majority of the time he's not, right? And so for right now, I think Pittman, unfortunately, is going to go through some growing pains. The good part is he's being used quite a bit, so I think it may take some time, but I do think Pittman, will be just fine for this year, and I think that's the end of it, right? I think he's going to be fine. On the other side, Tank Dell, I'm a little bit worried about because he's not really getting the targets. I think this could be just me thinking like a little bit outside the box, but I think um, the Texans are a little bit worried, right? If they don't get the ball to Stephon Diggs, he's going to have an outrage and things like that, right? And so I think we see it sometimes that they just kind of get him the ball, and then Tank Dell is kind of the odd man out this year. So for me, I am holding Tank Dell. I'm not really moving off him unless I can get, like a Godwin and a small plus. I tried to get a Godwin and a second for him, but the person was like, I don't really want to add to Godwin. And so for me, I'm just going to hold Tank Dell in that spot, right? Yes, Chris Godwin's having a really good year, but I'm giving up a lot of years there moving from Tank Dell to Chris Godwin. So for me, unless you can get Tank Dell on the cheap, I would hold, and I wouldn't really, I wouldn't really worry and sell him for right now because people are not going to want to buy for what his true value is. Like I did move him down, but I think he's the type of player that I can move back up because for me he's a good football player, and he just needs to get the ball. So right now, unfortunately, they have I have Nico Collins. He's their wide receiver one. That's the guy they're going to get to when they need to get a first down or need to move the ball. But unfortunately, I think Tank Dell is not going to get the amount of targets that he had last year. And yes, I think a little bit is he's coming back from that injury, so maybe he'll be better at the end of the season. And they realize that we should probably get the ball to Tank Dell, not Stephon Diggs.
So here's the one saving grace I will say on Tank Dell. Him and Stephon Diggs basically have the same target percentage. It's 12 targets to 11 in favor of Stephon Diggs. The difference is Diggs has gotten 10 receptions and 2 touchdowns, whereas Tank Dell's only gotten 4 catches. So it's just like seems like him and CJ Stroud are just a little bit out of sync. Whether it's just some rest coming back from the broken leg or what it is. I know that game against Chicago. I mean, one, Chicago has a good defense, but two, there's a couple
Yeah,
of like big plays where they just kind of just missed, right? And so I feel like the Tank Dell resurgence is coming a little bit, and then two, Nico Collins is clearly the one there. And like if we want to look at like air yards, Tank Dell's 30% air yards percentage compared to Stephon Diggs is 12. They're using Diggs more as like a kind of like a gimmicky like slot guy, whereas Tank Dell's kind of getting more of the downfield kind of deal. And so I feel like maybe just give it a little bit of time. I'm not going to panic sell
yeah,
just yet, but like there is going to be Tank Dell weeks. It just hasn't happened yet. I feel like it's coming, so I'm
totally.
not totally concerned. And then Michael Pittman, I mean, you talked about it, right? Like Anthony Richardson, he's a 50% completion guy right now. If he doesn't hit, if you get the bad half of the targets, like you're
Whoa.
SOL, right? Like you
Yeah,
got he's got 31% first read rate, 28% target share, but it's like if there's not accurate targets, you can only do so much. And so it's like Pittman's. I feel like he's going to have better days ahead, but he's going to be far inconsistent, which is what we've already
yeah.
kind of started to see.
So I think Jeff hit it right here, right? I don't think I agree with Jeff. I don't think Anthony Richardson is really going to be able to support a wide receiver like Michael Pittman, right?
Mhm.
Because the guys that are getting good games are Alec Pierce throwing just a deep ball and he got a touchdown, right? Pittman needs those targets and those 10, 15 yards and multiple of them for him to get in the game and get in. Like that's just how Michael Pittman is, right? He's an every down wide receiver that they need to get the ball to, and I just don't think that's what Anthony Richardson does, unfortunately. I think he can get better, but I don't know if he will. So I think that's right with someone like Michael Pittman, though. I think there'll be games that he does well. So if you could maybe find somebody that wants to get out of Michael Pittman, and if like we've talked about it, as long as you feel comfortable with your team and you think that it's really going to be a playoff first, then I would move him. But if there's any chance that is in the 106 or 101 to 106 range, I wouldn't move that first for Michael Pittman because I do think if Michael Pittman has a rough year, those wide receivers coming in next year are going to be firmly above him.
Agreed. All
So
right, let's.
this is
Oh, go
real
ahead.
quick. I want to hit on a few uh, trades for Tank Dell because you talked about it. Do not
Hmm,
panic sell Tank Dell. This happened today. Jamison Williams for Tank Dell and a 2026 second and a third. That is crazy to me, right?
yeah.
Don't don't panic sell on Tank Dell. So I just think Tank Dell for J.K. Dobbins in a second. Like, yes, J.K. Dobbins is having a great year so far, but I think the regression's coming. Tank Dell is going to be a solid every week player. J.K. Dobbins is going to
Mhm.
have games where he has 30 yards. So for me, just hold out with Tank Dell unless you can get yourself, here's a first and a second for Tank Dell. I think I would move Tank Dell for that, right? So there's
First, yeah.
spots there's spots where yes, you can move them, but and I think you hit it right on the head right there. Just don't panic sell on really either of these guys. I think I would move Pittman before I would move Tank Dell. Tank Dell is connected to a much better quarterback. So I just think if you can get out for Pittman for a first, do it. But if you're buying Pittman for a first, I really would hold off there.
Couldn't agree more. All right, let's hit some starts of the week.
Let's
Ron
do it.
is not here, but we can read off his real quick. His quarterback is Kyler Murray, which I can't disagree with. Who do you got for me, Holler?
Crazy, but give me Derek Carr. I think he's like
Oh,
QB. I don't know exactly the numbers, but he's got to be top three right now.
he's top five, I think.
So
Yeah.
a couple stats I have is first, The Saints offense is leading in points per game, 45.5 points per game. Nobody saw this coming. And then Derek Carr is just one of two quarterbacks that has thrown 5 touchdowns so far this year. I know touchdowns are down across the NFL, but for me, Derek Carr has really done a great job, and I think it's mainly because of Kubiak. That offense is humming right now, and it looks really good. And I don't think it's going to be stopped this week with how bad the Eagles' secondary is. Just go back and watch that 2-minute drive. That was god awful on Monday night. So I think you feel comfortable starting Derek Carr. It's crazy to say. It probably hurts your heart, Spanky. But Derek Carr is playing really well right now, and I don't see it stopping this week.
Yeah,
It will happen soon, but I don't think it's going to happen this week.
So I almost had Derek Carr for my start of the week too, and he's QB5 on the season. By the way, I just pulled up.
Okay.
My only hesitation with him is I'm just slightly worried about the Saints' offensive line being able to block Philly's front seven. I know they did a good job with Dallas last week. I think Philly has a stronger front than Dallas does, and so I'm a little worried that Philly will play bully ball and control the line of scrimmage. And that's the thing with Derek Carr is, like, if you keep him clean, he's fine. It's just he folds in the pocket when there's pressure. So if he starts getting hit a little bit, he just shuts down. He's a totally different dude. So that's my only concern. But if they keep him clean, then yeah. And it seems like the offense they're kind of scheming around that. Like, they know some of his strengths and weaknesses, and they're getting the ball out quicker. So he hasn't been under pressure a lot, which is awesome for him. And I know I crap on Derek Carr a lot, but he's a great dude. I like to see him succeed. I've been hurt. I've been hurt too many times by Derek Carr.
I think Kubiak's going to get a head coaching job soon. That's, to me, the difference between last year and this year with those Saints. Oh my goodness, it's crazy.
Yeah, no, for sure. My quarterback start of the week is Brock Purdy. He's going against your LA Rams, which is just an absolute train wreck on defense right now. They've had a ton of injuries, and I know the 49ers have their own injuries, but this is more just me trusting Kyle Shanahan to figure out a way to scheme up points against a bad defense. Purdy's actually played better than his fantasy points have allowed earlier this season. He's averaging about 275 passing yards a game. Touchdowns just really haven't been there because Jordan Mason's been feasting on him. Eventually, some of those should go back, and Purdy should get a higher TD rate. His touchdown rate right now is 1.5%, which is really low. That should kind of regress back towards the mean there, and I think this is the perfect week to get him back on the QB1 train.
I think as we hit it real quick, Ron's running back of the week is Jordan Mason, and he said that the Rams D is right now. If any fantasy player is playing against the Rams, it's a must start.
You start.
They have no secondary. The only two good players they have are the two rookies that they brought in this year, Jared Verse and Brandon Fisk. And if you watched any, I mean, I'm a fan, so I follow a lot of Rams people, but they missed on multiple sacks on Kyler Murray last week, excuse me. And that's them. That's them being rookies. So I think they're going to be good, but there's so many holes on the Rams defense right now that, yes, if you have players playing the Rams right now, start them against that defense. It's terrible.
Absolutely. All right. Do you want to get us your running back start of the week?
Yes. My running back start of the week is my boy, Brian Robinson. And not just because I love him, but just because the volume he's getting is outrageous right now. They can't throw the ball. I don't know if it's because Jaden Daniels or what it is, but they can't throw the ball. So last week he got 29 of 39 carries. Yes, Wes. He's only throwing to Terry McLaurin. But it's terrible, right? And so, I think, and outside of the 29 of 39 carries, he also ran more routes than Eckler. I think people were like, "Oh wow, Eckler looked pretty good," but he had only, I think it was like maybe 2 really good runs after the catch that made Eckler's numbers go up. So to me, Brian Robinson is their focal point of the offense right now. He's had more than 14 fantasy points in both games. and I expect that to be the same this week against Cincinnati. If you have Brian Robinson as your, third or fourth running back, you're in a really good shape. But get him in your lineups because I think he's going to have a good game with over 100 yards, and maybe he gets in for a touchdown this week.
Yeah, if Jaden Daniels stops stealing all of his
Yeah,
touchdowns,
I mean,
I love
it,
it.
it
Yeah.
it's okay because I like myself some Jaden Daniels, and I don't think that the passing offense is going to get any better. We've talked about it before. Their offensive coordinator is absolute garbage. So I just don't think it's going to get better.
Couldn't agree more. Ron's running back start of the week was Jordan Mason, kind of for the same points we talked about. The Rams defense can't stop anybody right now.
Yep.
My guy is going to be Tony Pollard. He's gotten 60% of the team's rushes, 16% target share. He's been on the field for 65% of the team snaps. I know Brian Callahan was talking about how he wants to get a more even split between him and Spears, but Tajay Spears is a little bit banged up. I know he logged a practice today in a limited fashion, so he might suit up on Sunday. But I think even even if they want to get him on the field more, Tony Pollard's just been so good with the touches he's gotten. He's going up against the Packers defense, who is pretty good. However, I think Pollard just sliced through the Jets defense. He's been on a tear to start the
Yep.
season. I don't think he's going to slow down yet, so I'm firing him up with confidence.
Yeah, and that Jets defense is supposed to be really good, and then 2 weeks in a row they are giving up a lot of points to running backs. So Jets have some problems, I think.
For sure.
All
Hit us
right.
with your wide receiver.
Yeah, so same reason I'm picking Derek Carr. I'm picking Chris Olave this week. I
Love it.
know Rashid Shaheed has been a hot wide receiver out of New Orleans right now, but I think it's about to change, mainly because most of his yards were coming on 2 big catches. I think he had a 70-yarder and a 60-yarder for touchdowns, week 1 and week 2. So we saw it last week. Chris Olave got a few more targets, but I think this week with a better front for Philadelphia, I think they're going to want to get the ball out quick. And for me, Chris Olave is the guy that they want to get to when they want to get the ball out quick. So I think coupled with the secondary of the Eagles just giving up so many points to wide receivers, again, just watch that 2-minute drive on Monday night. Mooney was wide open. And then I know it was a good route, but Drake London was wide open as well. So I just think there's going to be a lot of this for Chris Olave. I think this is the week that he gets more points, and I think he gets in there for a touchdown.
So what you're saying is he's gonna shoot the t-shirt cannons out into the into
Yes,
the stands.
more t-shirt cannons, baby. Let's go.
I love it so much. All right, Ron's start of the week at wide receiver was Brandon Ayuk. Debo's down. Sounds like George Kittle might be out for the count too. So it's going to be a Debo feast San Francisco this week. My start of the week at wide receiver, this feels really gross just because of how bad he's been. But Amari Cooper, they get the New York Giants this week, which they have a really, if I'm being nice, it's a middle of the road secondary. If I'm being honest, it's a bottom 10 secondary, right? Here's the thing, right? He's only gotten 7% of the team's yardage, but I think that's a little bit misleading. It's just like he's gotten 43% of Cleveland's air yards and a 26% first read rate. It's just Deshaun Watson and him have been out of sync, and I think this is either it's gonna get fixed at some point, right? And it's whether it's Deshaun Watson gets benched and it's Jameis Winston time, or Deshaun Watson decides to he kind of pulls his head out of his butt, and we start hitting on some of these targets for Amari Cooper, and he starts getting some yardage. I think this is the get right week.
Yep, I like this a lot. He was going to be my start of the week as well. And I think he was on your short yesterday or the day before as somebody that you can go out and buy for cheap right now. I think you can get him for a second. People want out of Amari Cooper. He's old. He's looking terrible. I don't like to really boost up Deshaun Watson, but he did look better last week. I wish nothing but the worst for Deshaun Watson, but he did look better last week. So
He did.
It will look good or it not look good. It will feel good for Amari Cooper to be good. And so I think it's coming. I really do, and I think the Giants. Yes, they didn't give up that much passing offense last week, but they are beatable. I think it's going to happen.
Yeah, so just for some context, Amari Cooper's usage right now, like his expected points per game should be closer to 12, and he's averaging about 4. So there's room there for it's coming. It's just a matter of when. Um,
Yeah. People like I know Chris Godwin's have a really really good like start, but people like Chris Godwin, Amari Cooper, those are guys that you want to go out and buy to beef up that
mhm.
your bench slash flex spots, right? Those are the type of guys that, especially somebody like Amari Cooper, because he is down right now. I think you could get him for cheap. Chris Godwin on the other side, on the other hand, you're probably going to have to pay up a little bit,
Yeah,
for probably a first. If that's a playoff first, I'd do it. But guys like him, I feel like really are good to beef up your roster. All right, let's hit these tight ends. Easy for Ron picked an easy one. Brock Bowers going against a weak Panthers defense. We talked about it earlier. Gardner Minshew wants to get the ball to his best two players, and he's going to. It was really nice to see Devonta Adams get a touchdown last week. So I think Brock Bowers is going to continue to put up tight end one or two numbers the rest of the year. My tight end of the week is the Hog Daddy himself, Hunter Henry. Get him in your lineups for tonight. Everybody says
yep.
the Jets defense is good, but people have been running all over the Jets the last 2 weeks. I think Ramondre Stevenson's a good start tonight as well. But I think Brissett, he really likes to pepper the tight ends. He had Hunter Henry had 12 targets last week. And so I think with however many injuries there are for the tight ends, George Kittle might not play, Evan Ingram might not play.
And
Hog Daddy, I
Joku.
think and
Yeah.
Joku's not going to play. So I think if you have Hog Daddy, put him in your lineup for tonight. And I think he has a good game. Should anywhere from 8 catches for 60 to 80 yards, and maybe he gets himself a touchdown. And also he is in my over for tonight, and he's at over
Oh, let's
under
go.
38 yards. So put it
I
in.
I took the over on that too. So
Yep.
so naturally he's going to go for about 20
Of
yards.
course. Yeah. That's how it goes for Spanky and I with our over unders.
It's true. It's true. But the Patriots always play the Jets pretty tough, so I think it should be he's in line for
Yeah.
a good game. All right. My tight end start of the week, and this I feel gross. I'm gonna try to get through this without throwing up. But Kyle Pitts, man, he's been awful. Listen, he's been bad. He hasn't been used. He's been bad. This is the last week I'm really holding out hope for him.
Yep.
Okay, so here's the thing: the Chiefs have actually allowed the most points to opposing tight ends all season. Isaiah likely had his 9 catch, 111-yard, 1 touchdown game last week. Mike Gesicki, Mike Gesicki is who he is. He had 7 catches, 91 yards. And Eric All, who's a rookie, went 4 for 32 last week against the Chiefs. They have some issues at the linebacker spot. They're not for whatever reason, like their corners shut down the receivers pretty well, but they're leaving tight ends open. If there's ever a week for Kyle Pitts to do it, it's probably this week, right? That being said, like prepare yourself. You might get hurt. We've seen him fail in lesser, lesser matchups in this one, or greater matchups in this one. But I'm holding out hope. This is the last week. I'm going to hold out hope for Kyle Pitts. If he fails this week, then he might just be done, right? So
Yep. I
that's
like
all I
it.
got.
They can't be throwing the ball to Mooney. Come on. I think Kyle Pitts. No,
And,
I know Kyle
and
Pitts is such a better player. Like, just get him the
not
ball.
only Mooney, but Ray McLeod is the one
Yeah, I know.
getting all the targets, which I don't understand.
Yep.
Um, it is what it is. But so we'll see. Kirk Cousins he looked a lot sharper last week. Hopefully that means guys like London and Pitts kind of start picking up. But
Yep.
we shall see.
Good call out west. Jermaine Johnson and Mosley are both out, so tight end and running back for the Pats are both good plays. Yep, I like them
Yep.
both. I like, Stevenson has had a really good, really really good year so far. So
Oh, hair my
yeah, I don't
cheeks so
know
gross.
what.
That's fair. So okay, so here's the thing. It's very easy for me to just look at rankings and just say like, oh, I'm gonna pick top 5 guys everywhere. I try to go a little off the beaten path, right, and not just guys who are just like, oh, they're a for sure smash. I try to scroll down a little bit and find guys that I like that maybe aren't being talked about. Um,
Yep,
Max Frankie's hold your nose picks of the week. That's fair.
love it. No, yeah.
That's
So
fair.
get like I said, get Hunter Henry in your lineup.
Yeah,
Also,
get the Hog
if
Daddy
you
in
need a
there.
quarterback, I hate saying it, but this week I think Aaron Rodgers has a good game tonight. I think he puts up, 200 yards and at least 2 touchdowns.
Think so?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, kickoffs in like 45 minutes, so we'll see here.
Hey, 200 yards isn't a lot. I just think, I'm
It's not. It's really
measly
not.
200 something yards and 2 touchdowns. That's all I'm asking for.
Hopefully, all to Garrett Wilson. Let's go.
Yes, let's do it. All right, guys.
Alrighty.
Thanks for watching.
Let's get out of here. See you guys. Thanks for tuning in.